What's going on, everyone? So the San Antonio Spurs had themselves quite the offseason, went and acquired Chris Paul, which I still think is the best move that they could have done outside of going and getting like a big superstar. I just think what he's going to bring as far as mentorship, his production, and just being able to elevate Victor Wembanyama even further, I think is just going to go a long way. Then trading for Harrison Barnes, I think that was a great acquisition. You get a NBA champion, somebody that was a big piece to that Warriors team, a guy that understands and plays his role excellent as that 3-and-D guy that can help kind of sew up a position of need, but also help mentor some of the other wings on this team. But the Spurs are still remaining active, right? The Spurs have been in conversations with various teams and have been heavily shopping Keldon Johnson this season. He's kind of the one guy that you can argue is kind of the odd man out, right? Like Keldon Johnson on the surface is solid, 24 years old, right? This guy last year gave you 16 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, right? This is a guy that can just be a legit vacuum scorer. Now, he's primarily been moved, particularly last season, as a guy off the bench. He still played 30 minutes a game, but he started in 27 games at a 69 compared to, you look at the previous years, he started every game outside of a game here and there for the Spurs before. So it's like, should they trade him? Is he a guy that is really worth trading? Because this is a guy that, excellent off the bench as that, 50% from 2-point range, give you, 35 to 40% from 3-point range on any given night. That vacuum score, right? There are questions about him as a starter on the Spurs. But in that, hey, come off the bench and you got the green light, he can really fit that role. But, you look at the Spurs now and, adding Chris Paul, adding guy in Harrison Barnes, right? Like, you kind of just need that 4 spot, or if you could get another 3-and-D wing and then kind of move Harrison Barnes even to the 4 if you needed to, because Victor's just size and length and just the ground he covers on the defensive side, right? Like, you can kind of have versatile wings, be like, okay, Victor's got it locked up on the inside, let's just become better defensively on the perimeter. You could even look at a guy like a Jeremy Sohan, who, you could slot him at the 4, right? So then you look at the bench, and chances are you're going to probably bring Stephon Castle off the bench. Do you really want Keldon Johnson kind of taking the shot attempts and everything from a Castle, from a Devin Vassell, from a Harrison Barnes, right? Like, is Keldon Johnson really going to be able to be that kind of vacuum scorer off the bench? Is he really going to be in the position to where, it's best for the Spurs to kind of let him get his, 15 shot attempts a game? Or is it best to kind of have him either take a step back or just ultimately trade him? Because the other side of that coin is Keldon Johnson is, how is he going to take it? Right? Like, Keldon Johnson is a guy that we've seen can be very moody and pouty when he's not getting his way, right? We've seen him kind of throw little fits, right? He can be very selfish at times. And it's just is that what's best for a team in which you have a Chris Paul, you have a, Harrison Barnes, you're trying to help shape, mold, and better the young guys. And from Keldon Johnson's standpoint, he's looking at it as dude, I'm a 20-point a game scorer if given the opportunity. It was just the other day I was averaging 22 for you guys, and now I'm getting demoted. Now you're doing all this other so there is this sense of it may be best for all sides to just kind of part and just kind of hey, Keldon Johnson. Plus, Keldon Johnson is their best trade chip. Outside, of course, Devin Vassell and guys. I'm talking about guys that you can part with that wouldn't hurt the overall team, right? Like if you lost Keldon Johnson tomorrow, it's not the end of the world for you if you're the Spurs. You're fine, right? If you lost to Devin Vassell, right? Like that could hurt, right? You lost, Stephon Castle, like that could hurt, right? Because that's a guy that's supposed to be for your future, right? Like the Spurs are lucky to be in a position to where there's not this necessity, right? There's not this sense of urgency. They don't have to rush to the door to go trade Keldon Johnson. They're not in a position where it's like, man, if we don't trade Keldon Johnson, then what are we doing type thing. Right? They can be patient and kind of let the right things develop. But you also don't want to have that problem in the locker room, right? And there is also an argument that, because even if you look at how Keldon Johnson's contract is structured, he's making $19 million this year. Then it drops. It drops to $17.5 and then $17.5 again. So you're talking about the next 2 years, right? Like that extra $1.5 million is the difference between, maybe an extra player or two, right? Because you don't have to necessarily turn Keldon Johnson into, a Lauri Markkanen. Because that's kind of been the main headline, is taking Keldon Johnson and turning him into Lauri Markkanen, right? There's also been reports that the Spurs have been more active and had more conversations than even what's been reported, which I think is interesting. But they've all kind of centered around Keldon Johnson. So there is an argument in that sense of just with his contract, it might be a good idea to sell him while you can. But to kind of circle back to what I was talking about with the kind of having that distraction in the locker room. Now, having Chris Paul, who doesn't mess around, doesn't play games, is not afraid. No, he's a guy that'll smack Keldon Johnson in the mouth if he has to, right? Is he able to kind of keep everything in line is a real question. But even then, the Spurs have a clear path, right? They have a clear goal. They have the direction in which they want to go, right? They if the right move's there, they want to expedite this thing. But they also have a lot of young talent that they want to allow to develop. And, again, you don't want to just give Johnson away. I'm not saying you just give Keldon Johnson away. But if you can, even if it's not for some big super duper star, even if it's just to kind of just get another piece that maybe makes some sense, maybe you're getting another big, a backup big or something, or, maybe a more defensive-minded player, like a 3-and-D wing or something, because you have Harrison Ingram, right? Even, for example, yes, he's on a two-way, but I imagine that they're going to give him opportunities to play some minutes, right? I can imagine that they're going to give him some opportunities to, kind of fill in some spots. You got, Blake Wesley is another guy that comes to mind, in which, you're going to want to give him opportunity, shot attempts. Julian Champagne, you're going to want to get him opportunities and shot attempts. Right? It's just is Keldon Johnson kind of in the way? Right? Even, who is it, Malachi Branham? Right? These guys are all guys that the Spurs want to see. They want to grow. They want to develop. They want to know the capabilities of these guys. And it's just you factor in that. You factor in Keldon Johnson's selfishness at times. You factor in kind of the type of player that he is. There are teams that need that. There are teams that definitely could use that vacuum scorer off the bench that they're throwing out there for, 25, 30 minutes a game. And it's hey, just go get us a buck. Go give us 15 a game, right? We need that offensive production off the bench. There are teams that could do that. And there's people that have made their entire careers off of that. I mean, look at Malik Monk, for example, right? And his ability to come off the bench. There's value in having a guy that can just go be a bucket getter, be that vacuum scorer night in and night out. And I definitely think that there is room for him on most teams. But I just think, given the roster shakeup, given the situation that they're in, given his just I just think if you go down the checklist, it's like, all right, we should look to trade Keldon Johnson. And I do think that there is this. I think it is. I think it's closer to a necessity than it's not. Right? It's not a necessity, but I think it's closer to it than like I think that you could potentially run into the point where it's like, shoot, like, and you don't want that to happen. You don't want to get to the point where you almost become desperate. It's like we need to get this guy off the team. Right? He's causing problems in the locker room. He's just not listening. He's taking shots. He's just being reckless. Right? Like, you don't want that. And we've seen that happen in the past. So, anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you think trading Keldon Johnson is a necessity? Do you think, like, no, be patient, take your time, he'll be fine? Do you have concerns about the locker room or just his style of play, his selfishness at times? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot, so we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.